Christianity stands or falls on the premise that Jesus is God, and I can give you 4 reasons claiming and proving that Jesus is a God. First, Jesus said he was a God. It may sound like it's not a proof, but think about it. If he didn't claim to be a God, then why should anyone else? When Israel's high priest asked Jesus whether he was the Messiah, Jesus responded, I am. On Mark verse 14, chapter 62, and Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And also, when Jesus was confronted by a crowd of Jewish skeptics, he said, Before Abraham was born, I am. On John 8:58, where truly I tell you, Jesus answered, Before Abraham was born, I am. And also can be seen on John 10:36 and Matthew 8:20. Jesus had titled Son of God as well as Lord and God. And also on John 10:30, Jesus stated, Father and I are one. And also in Hebrew 1, chapter 1 to 4, he was an exact representation of God inwardly and outwardly. But besides on his own testimony about being God, there's also the testimony of those personally knew Jesus, his disciples and others close to him. Consider this. Jesus' disciples abandoned their occupations and their families to spread the news that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, rose from the dead and performed several acts of miracles on his journey. And take note of this. They were willing to be beaten, tortured, starved, jailed, and ultimately killed for sharing that message. And that kind of martyrdom has happened in other religious traditions too. But the difference is this. These disciples were actual eyewitness to what they were claiming. Is like about Mary Magdalene saw Jesus resurrected from the dead. So how likely is that all of them would sacrifice so much for something that they knew to be untrue? And we heard about these contemporary eyewitnesses' testimony of Jesus as a God, about the experiences they saw on their near-death experiences. You may heard about the case of Colton Burpo, who when at the age of 4 encountered death. At the movie Heaven is for Real, Colton saw, according to the movie, his father blaming God for his illness, about how could God give that illness to a young boy, and about how he saw his mother calling to her best friends about her frustrations. He came back from near-death experiences with stunning details of heaven and Jesus, and other information that he couldn't have possibly known at a young age. And you may heard also about the related story of Kiana Romaric, a daughter of atheist who at a young age had visions of Jesus and painted them. Jesus didn't look like the typical depictions of Jesus, but little Colton later identified those paintings as the only ones that accurately captured what Jesus actually looked like. On the movie, father showed different picture of Jesus, but Colton didn't recognize that. But when his father showed the picture, the picture of the painting of Kianak, he immediately identified that man as Jesus Christ. Astonishing stories like this gives evidences for the divinity of Jesus. And also for the fourth is the resurrection of Jesus. The resurrection of Jesus was supported by the scriptures or by the testimony given by his disciples, especially about how Mary Magdalene saw the resurrection of Jesus on sight, and how he was crucified, was buried, and rose from the dead, and came and resurrected from heaven. The seven statements that Jesus Christ made on the cross. On Matthew verse 27, chapter 46 tells us that about the ninth hour, Jesus cried a loud voice saying, Eli, Eli, sabachthani, which means, my God, why thou hast forsaken me. Here, Jesus was expressing his feeling of abandonment as God placed the sins of the world in him, and because of that, God had to turn away from Jesus. As Jesus has feeling that weight of sin, he was experiencing a separation from God for the only time in all of eternity. The next, number 2, is Father, forgive them, for they did not know what they are doing. In Luke 23, chapter 34, those who crucified Jesus were not aware of the full scope of what they were doing because they did not recognize him as a Messiah. While the ignorance of divine truth did not mean they deserved forgiveness, prayer in the midst of this mocking him is an expression of the limitless compassion of divine grace. The number 3, I tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. Luke 23, chapter 43. In this passage, Jesus is assuring one of the criminals on the cross that when he died, he would be with Jesus in heaven. This was granted because even at the hour of his death, the criminal had expressed his faith in Jesus, recognizing him for who he was. Next is number 4, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. Luke 23, chapter 46. Here, Jesus is willingly giving up his soul into the Father's hand, indicating that he was about to die and that God had accepted his sacrifice. And number 4, dear woman, here is your son, and here is your mother. On John 19, chapters 26 and 27. When Jesus saw his mother standing near the cross with the Apostle John, whom he loved, he committed his mother's care into John's hands, and from that hour, John took her into his own home. In this verse, Jesus, ever the compassionate Son, is making sure his earthly mother is cared for after his death. And the number 6 is, I am thirsty. John 19:28. Jesus was here fulfilling the messianic prophecy from Psalm 69, chapter 21. They put gall in my food and give me vinegar for my thirst. By saying he was thirsty, he prompted the Roman guards to give him vinegar, which was customary at the crucifixion, thereby fulfilling the prophecy. And lastly, the number 4, it is finished. John 19:30. Jesus' last words meant that his suffering was over, and the whole work his Father had given him to do, which was to preach the gospel, work miracles, and obtain eternal salvation for his people, was done, accomplished, fulfilled, and the debt of the sin of the world was paid. Church is not a building. In Timothy 1, verse 5, Paul describes the church as people dedicated to doing whatever it takes to reach out and help others. We have a responsibility to serve and help others in need as a church. Caring for each other as well as those outside of the church is the quickest way to see Jesus change lives. In the Bible, church is always a reference to people, not a place. The church is a body of believers that lives out the gospel in the words and actions. The church is at its best when people inside the building take Jesus' message outside the building and serve those they met.